like a Hellcat.
Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another wrestling game review, with today's game being the very last wrestling game released on the NES. I'm talking about WWF King of the Ring, that saw release in November of 1993 in both the European and the North American markets. So once the main menu hits and you press start, you'll see you've got a choice between 1 and 2 player games. You can have a one-on-one match, a tag team match, a tournament, or you can enter the King of the Ring with a choice of easy, medium, or hard difficulty. So once you hit the character selection screen, you'll see that you've got 10 of the most popular wrestlers from this point in time. We've got Bret the Hitman Hart, we've got Lex Luger, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Razor Ramon, Bam Bam Bigelow, Yokozuna, Mr. Perfect, the Macho Man Randy Savage, and Hulk Hogan, with an additional character called You, who's just a generic wrestler that you can name and alter the attributes of if you choose to play as him. So like always, we're going to start with visuals first, and we'll talk about the positive things first, I think, because the character models are quite big and chunky, and they've got this solid look, and the colours for all the outfits mean they do resemble their real-life counterparts. We've got some animated fans as well, which I feel is quite good for an 8-bit wrestling game, and the animations for the moves, whilst they don't look fantastic, they do look reasonably good for an NES game. Now, there are some downsides, mainly down to the fact that there's a lack of colour, I feel, in this game. It's only really the ring ropes and the wrestlers that have had a lot of effort put into their colours, whereas all the audience in the ring itself, they don't look very good, and I just feel it looks a little bit bland. And we've also got some sprite flicker in places when we're pulling off moves. I don't think King of the Ring is a terrible looking game for the NES, but I definitely think there were better looking games on the console back then. So moving on to the sound effects and music, and thankfully all of the wrestlers have got versions of their entrance themes within the game, and that is a massive thing, because it is an essential part of a wrestling game, because it's such a massive part of wrestling in real life. And as well as that, the sound effects for the game aren't actually too bad. The moves all sound okay, and the audience respond to moves as well. The only negative, I guess you'd probably say, is the fact that the sound effects do get a little bit repetitive within the matches. But like always, I'm going to give you some examples of the wrestlers' themes so you can have a listen to those for yourselves. So moving on to the gameplay next, and I think the gameplay is reasonably well for an 8-bit wrestling game. You've got a punch button and a kick button. You can initiate a grapple by walking into your opponent, and from there you can smash the buttons to either pull off a body slam, a headbutt, a suplex, or a hip toss. Once your opponent's on the floor, you can hit them with a stomp or an elbow drop. You can hit a running elbow drop as well, and you can actually go up to the top rope and hit a flying elbow drop too. The massive downside I feel here is the fact there's just not many moves in the entire game, and there are no finishing moves for any of the wrestlers here either, which means the gameplay gets very repetitive very quickly. A lot of the matches will simply involve you slamming your opponent to the floor and then stomping them as much as you can before they get back up, and you try and hit them down again, and you do some more stomps before you eventually pin them. So I feel in the gameplay department there's not enough move variety, and it does get very repetitive. So moving on to the content and lifespan next, and like I've already said, there are 10 WWF wrestlers in this game, which is actually quite a few for an 8-bit game. The downside is that all the wrestlers have exactly the same moves, so it doesn't feel any different if you're playing as Bret Hart or Hulk Hogan or The Undertaker, and the fact that they've actually got slightly different attributes as well doesn't really make much difference to the gameplay either. Yes, there's that additional character that you can alter the attributes for and who represents yourself, but again, it doesn't really add anything to the game in terms of its lifespan. The two main modes of play, Tournament and King of the Ring, just see you going through 9 matches or 3 matches respectively, and that's it, and then it's over. And I don't really feel there's anything to make you want to come back and play this game again. I think major downside is obviously not having any finishing moves for the wrestlers. I've said this on other wrestling games where the games don't have them. It just feels like a massive part of the attraction is missing, because there's a great amount of satisfaction if you beat your opponent down, get them into low health, hit your finishing move and win the match. This game is completely devoid of that, and that is a massive downside. So for me, content and lifespan, not very strong. As always, that leaves us with our 2 final questions. Is King of the Ring still worth playing today, and where does it feature in our wrestling game top 10? Unfortunately, I can't really recommend this game to play, simply because it's so repetitive and it gets boring really, really quickly. And without finishing moves, again, takes away a massive appeal from the game, in my opinion. Where does it rank in our wrestling game top 10? May not come as a surprise. It's the worst wrestling game that we've looked at so far. It's not even as good as WrestleMania's Steel Cage Challenge. That game on the Master System has much better sound quality than this in terms of the music, and the animations for the moves are much smoother. So that means WWF King of the Ring comes in at number 9. But like always, these are just my thoughts and my thoughts alone. If yours differ, or if you agree with me, let me know with a comment down below. And like always, I'll be back with another wrestling game review sometime soon. Goodbye for now.